Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome today to the Innova.Buzz podcast, all the way from Seattle in Washington State, the USA, Lynn Whitbeck, who's the founder and CEO of Petite to Queen and host of the top podcast, Claim Your Career Crown. Welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Lynn. It's a great privilege to have you here as my guest.
Well, I am so excited to be here, and I've been looking forward to this. So let's get it going, Jürgen.
Yes. Yeah, we have had some technical difficulties getting to this point, but we're here now, so it's all good. Now, Alice Dudley Cash, who was our guest on episode 452 of the Innova.Buzz podcast, suggested that we have a conversation with you, and she introduced us. So big hello to Alice.
Yes, hi, aloha.
Aloha, yeah, she keeps introducing wonderful people to me and always starts off the email with aloha, wonderful people, or something along those lines, but it's always aloha.
Yes, well, she's in Hawaii, so,
Exactly,
yeah. Aloha state.
Yep. All right. Well, Petite to Queen, all about sales, and you've had a long career in sales across many industries. And I know one of the things you're very strong about, and this is something that I guess we hit it off straight away when we started speaking about that, is sales being all about building relationships and adding value. So I'm really excited to dig into that some more today with you, Lynn. Before we do that, though, what's the impact you're making in the world?
My impact is that when I help my clients to make their connections with their clients to help them, so we're creating a ripple, so they're creating impact for their clients in their business, for them individually, for their team members in their community, and that ripple becomes a wave. Yeah. And so when we are all doing that and, playing that part, it makes a pretty amazing wave that we can be a part of.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting when you see that happening, isn't it? When
yes.
Okay, you've made a little contribution to the client, but then that's enabled them to make a bigger contribution somewhere else, which has enabled another bigger contribution somewhere else. Yeah.
It
Fantastic.
is. It's like a stone that's skipping across the water. It just keeps going.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I mentioned relationships and your belief or your philosophy that sales is all about building relationships. One of the things I've heard you say on other podcasts and maybe in your own podcast, you talk about building relationships with worthy intent and with curiosity. So talk to us a little bit about what do you mean by those things and how do you do that once we get to the what does it mean?
Yeah, so worthy intent essentially means that you genuinely give a darn. I mean, you care about your client, their product and service. You care about serving them and helping them, and that you are curious about what they do, how they do it, what matters to them, why it matters to them. And so you come with this natural part of yourself to serve and help, but it's always in the frame of how does it serve and help the client. And in some cases, you may recognize that you're not the right fit, but a resource or a company or individual who would be a good fit for them. And so that's still relationship building. And sometimes that not now can be for later. And but when you're coming at that point, people today, they have such a high level of awareness when you're trying to sell them, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to force or manipulate them. And so I've always approached things from worthy intent. I think that's why I love sales from the beginning, is because I knew it wasn't rocket science. I wasn't saving the world, but I made a difference for my clients. I took something off their plate they didn't have to think about again. And that was a gift. And that was the way I was helping and serving them. So with worthy intent, it really is about those cornerstones of a relationship that you care about the other person. You care about them as individuals. You care about them as an entity. And that sets you apart significantly and gives you a competitive edge against and we all know they're out there.
Yeah.
The people who participate in sleazy sales tactics.
Yeah, that's right. Using all the traditional means of we'll throw in the steak knives with that, and scarcity tactics. There's only 3 left, so you better hurry, or the price goes up in a day, or all these kind of things. Yeah, there's a couple of things you said there that I think are really key, and obviously the idea of genuinely caring for your client and your client's success, and being curious to understand what that will mean to them. But the 2 things that I wanted to highlight were, first of all, being able to say, I don't think we're the right fit for you right now, or I don't think our product or service is actually going to do that for you. And also having the abundance mentality to say, one of my competitors actually does this exactly, they would be a good match. So here's their phone number, or I'll give you an introduction. That's the one thing that stood out to me. And whenever I've had an experience of being on the receiving end of that, where somebody said, I don't think we have the right product for you, please go and see this person, that's a better match, then I know that's a genuine, that person is genuine. They're coming from a service, heart-based service mindset. And the other one is that it's a no today. It may not be a no next week or in a month's time. And particularly when you've established that relationship, that I've sent you away somewhere else because I think that's going to serve you better. And so you go away knowing that I care about your success more than I care about putting dollars in my bank account at your expense, sort of thing.
Absolutely. And it's a core relationship builder, because that they know who you are right there. They know who you are, the essence of who you are, and that it will last a long time. And they will come back, and maybe they'll refer someone else to you, or they'll introduce you to someone.
That's right.
Or their needs change, or your services change. And so we're talking about this long term. I mean, I'm really proud to say that I can pick up the phone and call clients from decades past, and they'd be happy to hear from me. And so that's this, that's what we're talking about here. And that creates the things that you really want. And that's introductions and referrals. They shorten the sales cycle. They increase your profit. They're the easiest sale that you're going to make. And because you've established your credibility, you're trustworthy, your capabilities, and they are happy to reciprocate. Even if you ended up not doing business with them because it wasn't the right timing for whatever the match was, but they still recognize that you are someone that they would want to refer someone to who does need what's a good fit for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another really important point, is looking at any sales conversation in a broader sense and saying, well, this may not be the right fit. I may not be the right fit for you right now. My product might not be the right fit for your needs right now. But in the bigger scheme of things, because we've built a relationship, because I generally care about your success, you're going to be talking in a positive way about me to all of your contacts, and somewhere out there's going to be a match.
Absolutely. And I want to point out there is a shadow side here, and that's if when you do trick or manipulate or force a sale because you're only interested in getting the sale, people figure it out. They always do. And that's where you have that constant client churn, and you aren't building the type of reputation that I certainly aspire to. And so it's a real short-term gain for a long-term loss.
Yeah. And also,
go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I've had this experience. I mean, in the early days, I took on clients where they weren't really a good fit. And it was, I genuinely believed I could help them. but deep down I knew it wasn't really a good match. So I wasn't coming from the point of view of trying to trick them simply to grow my business. It was more around, yes, I wanted to grow my business, but I genuinely believed I could help these people. Deep down, I knew it wasn't really a good match. Now, those projects ended up being a lot more draining and a lot more tiring and a lot harder to do than the ideal matches, which seemed to just flow and were always enjoyable. And whenever there was an issue, it was just a case of pick up the phone, we have a chat, we sort it out like that. Whereas the others, it became every little thing became a big deal and it was really draining. And I learned the hard way that, it's probably better to say no to those when there's that gut feel or there's something there that signals, no, it's not really a good match. It's probably best to just straight up say that, look, I don't think we're a good match for one another. And as you mentioned earlier, ideally, maybe give them an introduction to somebody that is a good match.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, because it's sort of that 80-20 rule. You're going to spend 80% of your time on 20% of your business. And sometimes you don't realize that until you're into the relationship a ways. I know that I was working with a client and it took 6 months before I realized, and we were getting to roll out a whole program, and they're going like, no, we want our people to make one call. And if they don't buy, they move on to the next person. And I went, what? And I said, okay, we've spent 6 months working together and you want your team to become one call closers. And you're not selling a product or service that people are going to make a decision like that. And in most cases, most people can't make an instant decision.
Yeah.
And your most loyal clients are actually the ones who take longer to deliberate and they carefully formulate a response. Because the people who make those instant decisions, they're always chasing the next shiny object.
That's right.
They got ants in their pants. And it was like, that was a moment that is like, okay, we're actually not a good fit because I'm not going to do that. It's completely against everything we've worked on. And we were able to work it out and we parted amicably. We still talk. But at that point, it was what you had just said, I realized that we weren't a good fit. And I started getting a sense of that, but at one point it was just like, whoa, people reveal themselves like onions.
Yeah, that's right. And then suddenly you think, hang on, this is really a clash of values here. That's when it gets tricky.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things, I know you're very strong on feedback and follow-up. Follow-up in particular I want to focus on. And in talking about building these relationships and having conversations, sales conversations as a way to kind of be curious and make sure that we're a good match as a supplier for the potential client, and not using some of these pushy tactics, I'll call them, of scarcity, time limiting, or there's only a few left, or those sort of things. I always find myself falling into the trap of then not doing enough follow-up or not doing follow-up well enough, because I'm always afraid of that's then being pushy and so on. So how do we find that balance, and how do we do follow-up in a good way?
Yeah. So, first of all, follow-up is, the classic fortune is in the follow-up. Most people aren't ready to make a decision right away, and you need to keep guiding them to that decision. And you do that by providing value, things that matter to them. And when you plan your follow-up, whether, your outreach is on one side of the equation when you're, but then once you've had the meeting, you've had the presentation, now you're doing follow-up. It can still take, even when they say yes, you could be following up to get the agreement signed and to get the kickoff meeting scheduled. Yeah. So follow-up is always necessary. And even with established clients, follow-up is necessary. So Think about your own team members. You have to follow up on the status of things. I mean, it's just a natural part. So A, take that stigma away. Second, think about where your client is at that stage. If they're still pre-decision, what type of things can you provide to them, and in a myriad of formats that will help move them forward. So answers, FAQs, explainers, a key resource that will help them look at something or reframe something. And these are things that you can put together and have planned. And then you go, okay, this client is at this point. This is, all your clients are not all going to match the exact same pattern, but this is what matters to them. This is the most important thing. I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to send it to them. And it could be that, hey, I was just on a podcast and we talked about the importance of follow-up and templating this. And I think you should go ahead and listen to this, and it's going to give you some great ideas. I mean, that's a way to follow up, to deliver value, and they can choose to tune in or not. But the key is that they remember that when you reached out, you actually delivered value, something that mattered to them. Now, the one thing I don't want you to do, please do not pick up the phone and say, oh, hi, Jürgen, I'm calling because I want to follow up and check in and see how this is coming along.
Have you made a decision yet?
Come up with things that are more creative and that, once again, that deliver value and guide your client through that decision-making process, because they need different things at different points. And even if the white paper, the podcast, a video, whatever it is that you deliver, they still remember that it was something that mattered, even if they don't partake. And people are busy. They're going to ghost you because other things are going on and you're just not the front burner issue. That's okay. They are going to remember that you've been staying in contact. And at one point, you're going to be able to make that connection. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. I really recommend having 13 touch points. And with the 13th being, I've done you a disservice, or, it's time to say goodbye. But because, people decide at different points. Usually you don't have to go all the way to 13. I rarely have, but it will elicit a response. And at the very least, give them a safe space to say, the timing's just not right. Will you follow up in 6 months? Yes, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great strategy. And I think the core of the follow-up there is to provide value, but in a way that I think the key thing that you said there is something that means something to them and knowing where they're at in their journey. So that comes back to the initial conversation that you've had and the curiosity to have asked all those questions and to really understand where are they at, what's really their problem, what's really their objective and desired outcome, and where are they at in their journey right now. And I've been using this sort of philosophy, but I still kind of I'm curious about that 13th email, because I still find myself, I'll send, hey, listen to this podcast, there's some great advice there, I think you'll benefit from some of the tips on this. Or recently I sent one out the other day where it was an article about the platform that we talked about using for the service we were going to provide. And that platform had announced, and we'd set up something for that client already outside of that platform. And that platform had announced that they were building this thing that we'd set up. They were building that inside their platform, which would make it a lot easier to do the things that they wanted to do. So I sent them that information. I said, hey, if you're still on the fence about using this platform, because there was another platform in discussion, if you're still on the fence about this, here's an interesting new bit of information. They've just said they're going to develop this and launch this in the next couple of weeks. So that's the sort of thing I will go back. But I'm curious about, because I still find it difficult then to where do you cross over and say, hey, it's time you actually told me yes or no, and if it's no, well, that's fine. So where do you cross over into that space, and how do you do that elegantly?
Well, I mean, of course, you always do need to ask for the sale. If you don't ask, you're not going to get.
Yeah.
But there's a number of things that you can look for buying signals, from your client, and those buying signals will help you determine that they're ready. I really like the classic, either or close. Would you like to get this initiated this quarter, or is next quarter going to be better for you and your team? And so that's sort of an either or close. Now, and it's an assumptive close at the same time.
Yeah.
It's assuming a yes, but it's giving them an option. Now, that's the type of thing that is going to elicit a response. You can also, schedule a pre-kickoff meeting to go over the implementation plan. I mean, once again, that's an assumptive close, and that's going over what it's going to entail, to put this program, to move it to the next level, to actually get into a kickoff call. And so there's a number of things that you can do. It really depends on your product or service and your industry, your ideal client avatar. And so going across some broad spectrum things is a little difficult. I do want to point out that there's one thing we haven't talked about in the sense of either outreach and or follow-up, and that's actually using good old-fashioned postal service or sending packages, shipping packages. And the reason I mention this is that today so much is virtual. Whether here we are on different continents and we're doing this meeting together, or we're doing all the different things we go with email and social, but actually getting a package that is handwritten, addressed and delivered, people will open those packages, and everybody loves to get a package, and it's almost stands out in its novelty now.
It is, yeah.
And it is a way that people will want to feel that reciprocal, like, oh, I got this, thank you so much. And it's a means of moving the conversation forward and to break through the ice at whatever stage you're at, or if they've been ghosting you. So it's a terrific way. And once again, it doesn't have to be something, it can be as simple as a handwritten note card, but it can be something that you package and send that's tied to your product or service, that once again has meaning and will help move the conversation forward. You can also use humor, and you can make it fun. Way back in my corporate days, I would actually, for some people, not for everyone, I would look at who they were as individuals, and I would literally send them an old boot. Now, this boot wouldn't smell and it wouldn't be dirty, but it was an old worn boot with a handwritten card and said, aren't you ready to trade in and trade up and get a new pair? And people would call me laughing, and it honestly, it was a great way to then segue into, okay, what's your calendar look like next week? Let's get a meeting scheduled. So, and that's in that way, asking for the sale in the sense of moving the conversation forward.
Yeah, I love it. It's unique. Certainly a novel idea. I think clearly the idea of how can you stand out from the ordinary, and so the text message or even a phone call to say, have you made a decision yet, or the email certainly has become run of the mill and ordinary. And the danger with email, I know I've got hundreds of emails that I haven't even looked at, and I occasionally come across some and it said, well, this is the fourth time I've emailed you and I still haven't got a response. Where are all those other emails? Well, yeah, they're buried there somewhere because I just haven't found them in my list. So that if you turn that around and say, well, I'm going to send somebody an email and expect them to see that straight away, well, they're probably going to face the same situation as I just described. The one of the ways I use to stand out a lot, and I stick in the virtual world, but doing videos. And I've just had a pitch. So with this podcast, I get lots of pitches to come on this podcast, and usually they're just a written thing, and there's a whole topic around that, how you do this properly. But there was one I got yesterday where somebody actually sent me a video, a personalized video, where they spoke to me. They talked about the podcast that they'd listened to. They connected that to what they had to offer for my podcast. So that's an example of how you can stand out in the virtual world. But then, of course, going the next step, particularly if it's a big sale, big potential sale, to actually send something in the mail is definitely a way to stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things that I also will say that when we are doing a bigger sale and you're doing a presentation, you can think about the things that you're going to send afterwards, and make sure you get a minimal actionable commitment at the time of the meeting. What is the next step that everyone's in agreement on? And so that you have that already in your hip pocket, to move the conversation forward. And so, and I do like that, using video and using your voice is a tremendous way. And you can do that with also on a smaller scale with LinkedIn, with your messages, using the app on your phone and also on other social media direct message platforms. But actually, even if you're sending someone a text message, actually sending them a voice message it increases the likelihood that someone's going to listen to it exponentially. And the same if you just record a quick video of yourself talking to them, human to human. Oh my gosh, human to human. And you can do that. And it's, once again, it's really increases the effectiveness. Now, if you are using like DMs or something on LinkedIn, you do want to be aware of how often that person engages on LinkedIn. Some people are not very active on LinkedIn. So your message could sit there for months.
Like throwing the bottle in the water, right? Message in the bottle.
So, you need to meet them where they're at and what's going to make the most sense. And honestly, the good old fashioned pick up the phone and call them really has a lot of value today. Once again, human to human, and just have that voicemail planned. Do the triumphant triangle where you leave a voicemail, you then follow up with an email of that voicemail, the content, with the link to whatever you referred to, that piece of value. And then you can, 3 business days later, follow up with a text message or some kind of direct message with the same information.
Yeah, excellent. Well, there's a core message in that. Well, follow-up is really important, but let's make sales human again. Human to human. Wonderful. Well, this is fabulous, Lynn.
People buy from people.
Exactly, yeah. We could go on talking ages about this approach, but I think it's a good point now to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. And it's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest. And the idea is you'll inspire our listener to go and do something awesome today, resulting from these answers.
All right. I'm ready.
All right. Excellent. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Growth mindset. Be open to opportunities and to change and to changing your mind.
Yeah. And be curious, which is where we started the conversation today, being having an abundant mindset and being curious. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
I ask for input. I gather people, peers. I ask for and I digest and I take the best of the best. I'm always looking for new ideas in that sense. I pursue different things. If someone has a recommendation for a video for me to watch or a book to read, I will take that into account because it's amazing, or a podcast that you can listen to, one idea that could suddenly spark something amazing.
Yeah. And there's so much information out there, isn't there? So it's always good. It's a little bit like getting referrals from people for a sale or a purchase. It's getting people's ideas about this is a good bit of information. And filtering that out. Wonderful. All right. Now, do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Wow. There's so many different resources that I use. But one of the things that I do a lot is my own content. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I'll actually, when I'm working on something for a client, I'll look at, okay, well, what have we done and what worked and why did it work? Is this something that's going to work for this client? And so I feel like I've been there, done that for so many things.
Yeah.
And some things are a great fit and other things aren't. But just looking at that breadth of experience is something that I like to pull forward.
I love it. That's brilliant. We talk so much in the content production world about how you can repurpose your own content and use it in different ways, but to actually look at it from the point of view, I've done similar work for another client. I've written out instructions how to do something. This is actually a perfect fit over here. It's going to save me a lot of time, just cut and paste and adapt a little bit. And also, I've often forget this, but sometimes I discover stuff and I think, wow, that's brilliant. I can use that right now. And so it's really a great tip to actually go back and revisit those things.
Yeah. I mind map things out. I don't know if you've ever heard of that tool, but it's a mind
absolutely.
mapping tool. And I will mind map out a process, even if I'm designing something new for a client, but then I make a copy for ourselves because it's something that, and then as I refine it, but that becomes something that literally goes into the stable that can be used in another situation that's appropriate and then refined and tweaked for that particular situation and client.
Brilliant tip. That was worth listening to this stage for that tip alone. Yeah. I'm a big fan of mind mapping, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
The best way to keep a client on track is to have a strategic plan. And when they get distracted by the shiny object, is to, first of all, sometimes that shiny object is actually an incredible opportunity and you're going to want to go ahead and pivot. But most of the time, you're going to say, well, how does that fit into our strategic plan? How is our plan currently working? And is this something that we should go ahead and put in right here 3 months down the road to revisit? And so whenever something like this comes up, the first thing is how does that fit our mission and what our initiatives and goals are right now? And if sometimes there's things that's like, oh, wow, that would be so cool to do, but not now.
Yeah.
Or it can be such a tremendous opportunity that we're going to go ahead and reassess and assign resources so we can get this done. But often what happens is that people get distracted. And so that 3 months down the road, they still haven't actually accomplished that thing because they've done 20 different things.
Yeah. So having a really clear mission and strategic plan and knowing that. And I know even from my personal experience, being really clear in specific areas that I'm focusing the business on, being really clear about the mission, what's the outcome I desire for that, what are the strategic steps, how I'm going to get there. I find that makes decisions so easy if that's always clear. And there'll be times when I see a shiny new toy and I say, oh, no problem, I'm going to buy that straight away because I just know immediately that it's a fit in here. So it is an opportunity. Or if it's not, that'd be cool. And I say, well, hang on, it's just going to be a distraction. So it makes it really clear, that distinction.
Yeah, goes into the reading list.
Yeah, later. All right. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
The number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself is to think like your client. You really need to get into their head of what do they want, need, or lack. Why is it important to them? I mean, what area of concern does it address? What pain point? Why it matters to them? What's in it for them? So they can ... what.
Yeah.
When you think like the client, that truly sets you apart because now you can focus all of your efforts, your sales, your marketing, your messaging, your positioning around what your client's perception is, because your client's perception is truth.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming back to our earlier conversation on feedback and follow-up and providing the value in that follow-up and particularly something that's relevant right now to where they're at in their journey. So if you know all these things, then that makes that so easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, then it's like 5 minutes. You grab what you need.
Yeah.
You already have the template put together, and then out it goes.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round, and thanks for the conversation today. This has been fabulous, Lynn. Now, where can people find out more about you and about the work you do, and maybe even get in touch to say thanks for what you've shared today?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to our website, petite and the digit 2 queen, petite2queen.com. Get that right. And we have a plethora of resources, and you can also watch my TV show, Get More Clients. That's all about getting more clients and how you can implement your sales.
Excellent. And we'll have that link in the show notes, of course, so you don't have to remember that it is petite with the number 2 and then queen, but we'll have the link there. All right. Well, thanks, Lynn. What action would you like our listeners to take out of our conversation today?
I think if there was one thing that I'd like them to take out of it, I'd like them to do some introspection about where they're at and how they're going to market, how they're reaching out to their clients, and think about their client's perspective, and then that genuine curiosity and worthy intent, so that they can create more impact for their clients, for their companies, and for their community.
Yeah, good call to action, and it's very consistent with the whole conversation today, and lots of great tips throughout the conversation as to how you can do that when you get to the point of actually implementing those things after that introspection. So thanks so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and all those tips so generously today, Lynn. I've learnt quite a bit. I'm going to look back at some of my feedback processes and also the idea of using those mind maps that I'm a big fan of, but using them actually to interconnect work that I've done so that I can easily find it later on and repurpose it again. So a couple of big highlights.
We keep all ours in a folder on our Google Drive.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Thanks so much. And please do stay in touch.
I will. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure and a privilege to be here today.
Thanks.